Social Studies, Chapter 3, Section 1.
Although there were many stories that early people from Europe or Asia sailed to the Americas, Columbus sailed to the West Indies using 3 ships and a crew of 90 sailors. Unlike the Native Americans who had discovered lands before him, he told people about it. After he died, Vasco Núñez de Balbo founded the Pacific, and Ferdinand Magellan discovered how wide it was. The Columbian Exchange was eventually developed, and the Europeans and the Native Americans learned from each other because of this.
Social Studies, Chapter 3, Section 2. Spanish conquistadors are sent to the Americas by the throne in search of gold and riches. Hernando Cortez set sail with about 600 soldiers in search of riches. Montezuma, the Aztec emperor at the time, believed that the strange men were gods and fulfilled ancient predictions. When Cortez came, he took advantage of Montezuma's invitation. Cortez imprisoned Montezuma in his own city. Finally, the Aztecs drove out the Spanish, but they were quickly defeated. Cortez killed Montezuma, thus the empire fell. Another conquistador, Francisco Pizarro, set sail for the Incan Empire. He quickly captured their emperor, Atafolla, and destroyed the empire. The Europeans defeated the natives so easily because they had much better and efficient weapons. Also, European diseases killed these empires very quickly. The Spanish explored northward for the new riches. Ponce de Leon, a Spanish conquistador, looked for the legendary Fountain of Youth, but he never found it. Spain eventually set up 3 types of settlements: pueblos, placidos, and missions. They had 3 social classes: peninsulares, criollos, and mestizos. Slaves were needed to operate the huge plantations, so Atlantic slave trade begins. Boats would capture African Americans as slaves and take them to the Americas. Social Studies, Chapter 3, Section 3.
The Europeans wanted to reach the riches of Asia. They wanted to find a shorter route to this passion than Magellan's way. Many explorers tried to find a shorter way to Asia, but they didn't. The Europeans' want for riches was difficult because of religious differences. The Roman Catholic Church was the only church in Western Europe. In 1517, a man named Martin Luther challenged the Catholic practices and formed a Protestant Reformation, which caused many rivalries in the Americas. Other conflicts included rivalry over furs in the New Netherlands. This eventually led to an alliance.
Social Studies, Chapter 3, Section 4.
In the late 1500s, England saw all the riches Spain got from North America. They got mad and wanted to set up their own colonies. So a man named Sir Walter Raleigh tried to set up a colony, then failed. Then Raleigh sent John White with more people. Supplies ran low, so he went back and planned to stay for 3 months. But John found England and Spain going to war, so he couldn't leave for 3 years. And when he got back, he found it deserted. 20 years later, the Virginia Company of London received a charter or a legal document giving certain rights to the first war company. This charter let the Virginia Company settle between North Carolina and the Potomac River. Then, in 1607, 105 colonists sailed into Chesapeake Bay and built homes along the James River. They later found many problems where they settled and they were close to failure. Then John Smith, a soldier, saw that instead of planting, colonists looked for gold. Smith helped with rules like you don't work, you don't get to eat. And he asked a powerful chief in the area for corn, and the chief helped. But the peace didn't last long, so they fought. Then John Smith left, and the desperate settlers ate dogs and cats, snakes, and even toad squirrels. They also broke up houses for firewood. In 1619, people began to make laws less harsh in the colonies. The men elected burgesses or representatives to govern. The burgesses met at the House of Burgesses. There they made laws. Jamestown didn't have enough women, so the Virginia Company sent 100 women over. But most died from work, and there were only 300 women and thousands of men. Then people began to enslave Africans, but some were still left alone. Free ones could even vote. Later, there were laws letting white men enslaved the Africans for life.
Social Studies, Chapter 3, Section 5.
In Europe during the 1500s, it wasn't easy to practice religion freely. There were also religious wars between Roman Catholic and Protestants. They fought for almost 40 years. Rulers chose their own established church. People who didn't follow the established church were persecuted or punished because of their beliefs. There was one group who were known as the Separatists that wanted to divide the Church of England. They were persecuted so much that they left and went to a Dutch colony who accepted them. But they missed English ways and thought their children were becoming very Dutch. Then a few of them went back to England with non-separatists and got a charter to set up a colony in Virginia. They arrived on the Mayflower, but before they got there, they thought where they were settling didn't apply to their charter. So the Pilgrims made the Mayflower Compact, and 41 men, Pilgrim or not, signed it. Then adult males elected representatives for themselves. The Pilgrims set a precedent or example for others to follow in the future about religious freedom. The people at Plymouth got there right before winter, making them not able to plant more crops before it was too cold. They got sick and most died, but their faith kept them going. In the spring, Pilgrims began planting crops with the help of Indians. Samoset knew their language and introduced them to Massasoit, the Wampanoag chief. Squanto was the Indian who helped the most. He knew English too. He gave them corn, pumpkin, and beans and showed them how to plant them. He taught them also how to catch eels. Then the Pilgrims had a very good harvest and set aside a day of thanksgiving to God. Then they did the celebration every year.
You can wait.